I was never the kind of person who expected to be remembered. Over the years, I learned that in some families, presence doesn't equal belonging, and blood doesn't guarantee warmth. I had gotten used to it. So used to it, in fact, that I developed a quiet little ritual. The day before any family event, I'd turn off my phone and pretend I was busy. It was easier that way. Better than seeing pictures afterward and pretending it didn't sting. But that Saturday morning, as I sipped my lukewarm coffee, my phone buzzed. A message from my sister. Brief, cold, almost formal. Anna's birthday tomorrow at 5 p.m. It's at our place. Come if you want. No emojis, no, we'd love to see you. Just an obligation tossed my way like a spare napkin at the end of a table. I stared at the message for a while, rereading it like it might reveal a hidden warmth if I squinted hard enough. Anna is my niece. She just turned 8. She's sweet, at least when she's not parroting things her mother says behind closed doors. She used to run to hug me. Lately, she just waves, distracted, before joining whatever game her cousins are playing. I hadn't seen her in nearly 4 months. I closed my phone and stood there for a moment in the quiet. My apartment, though small, was spotless. Sunlight filtered through the window, soft and golden, the way it gets when it wants to lull you into thinking everything is okay. I should ignore it, I thought. I should stay home, bake something for myself, watch a movie, do my nails. But something in me twitched. Not anger, not curiosity, something quieter, sadder. That part of us that still wants to be invited, even knowing the table wasn't set for us. I texted back, "Thanks, I'll be there." Even typing it felt like giving in. Then I stared at my closet for far too long. What do you wear to a party where you're not really wanted? Too casual and they'll whisper I look like I just rolled out of bed. Too dressy and they'll say I'm trying too hard. I settled on something neutral. Dark jeans, a soft blouse, and a small gold necklace Anna once said she liked. And then there was the gift. Of course, I couldn't just show up empty-handed. That would be the final proof that I was the selfish one, the detached one, the one who didn't care about family. So I went out that afternoon and bought her the art set she'd mentioned during a rushed call weeks ago. She wanted it more than anything. With the glitter pens, she'd said. I asked the clerk to wrap it. I chose purple paper, her favorite color, and tied it with a silver bow. And I stared at it all evening, wondering why I felt so nervous, when all I was doing was showing up for a child's birthday. A child I loved. A family that tolerated me, at best. But I knew. Deep down, I knew. They had made it clear before, and they would make it clear again. The morning light came in soft, almost apologetic, as if it, too, knew where I was going. I stood by the window for a long time, holding my coffee but not drinking it, watching the street below breathe its slow Sunday rhythm. People walking dogs, a jogger adjusting her playlist. Somewhere, a child laughed. That kind of laugh that's sharp and full of air, still untouched by the complexity of adult rooms. And I wondered, what kind of world would Anna grow into? I wondered if she would ever know what it meant to walk into a space where you're technically invited but spiritually unwelcome, to be smiled at with teeth and not eyes, to have her name spoken in the third person while she's still in the room. That was the world I was waking into today. The invitation had arrived like a leftover, not sent with warmth, not extended with joy, just a text, flat, cold, a footnote in someone else's plans. But Anna, she wasn't the one who had hurt me. She didn't get to choose the way my name was whispered like a warning. She didn't teach her tongue to speak the silence her mother crafted around me. So yes, I was going. For her. The gift sat on the table, still wrapped in that deep lavender paper with silver ribbon. I had found it the day before after visiting 3 different stores. The art set, the one with the glitter pens, the metallic markers, the one she said she wanted months ago when I called and she answered her mom's phone by accident. She had whispered it, as if saying it out loud might make it disappear. I remembered that. I remember everything when it comes to her. I tied the ribbon tighter, gently flattening the folds in the paper like it mattered, like perfection would somehow defend me from what was coming. The rest of the morning moved in slow motion. I got ready in silence, not a word spoken out loud. My apartment had never felt so small, so echoey. I moved from closet to bathroom to kitchen like someone preparing for a trial, not a party. I stared at my reflection for a long time. Not because I was unsure of what to wear, but because I was bracing for what I'd see in their eyes when I arrived. There's a kind of pain that only family can inflict. It's quiet, almost elegant in its cruelty. It doesn't slap you, it dismisses you, leaves you untouched and yet somehow erased. I chose a simple outfit, something soft, something safe. No earrings, just the little gold necklace Anna once complimented. That one detail, that one thread of connection. And then I left. The drive to the house felt longer than it was. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than they needed to. The radio was off. Even the engine sounded louder than usual. Every red light felt like a moment to ask myself, why are you doing this? But I already knew the answer. I had known it before the coffee, before the wrapping, before the message was ever sent. Because sometimes, even when you're not wanted, you show up. For love. Not to be accepted, not to be applauded, just to prove to yourself that their absence of affection won't teach you to hate. The house came into view. The same one we grew up in. The porch still had that chipped step Dad always promised to fix. The rose bush Mom planted was still leaning left. But the colors felt wrong. The air around it was too still. They didn't know I owned it. Not really. They knew, legally, sure. The papers were signed, the bank transfers done. But they never felt it, never accepted it. To them, I was the one who bought it back out of guilt. A formality, a favor, never an owner, never in charge. And that's exactly how they treated me. I sat in the car with the engine off, holding the gift on my lap like it might vanish if I moved too fast. From the backyard, I could hear the echo of laughter and clinking glasses, children's voices rising and falling, someone singing off-key. It sounded like a party. It didn't sound like mine. I stepped out. My shoes crunched softly against the gravel. Every step toward the door felt like crossing back into a version of myself I no longer wanted to be. The girl who waits to be acknowledged, the woman who lowers her voice to keep the room calm. I rang the doorbell, even though I had a key. Old habits die slow deaths. My brother-in-law opened it. His face was a mix of surprise and forced politeness. He leaned against the frame, smile already strained. "Hey, you came." I answered. He stepped aside. "They're all in the back." I nodded and walked in, the smell of cake and party decorations mixing with the underlying scent of detachment. Streamers hung from the ceiling. Balloons drifted lazily near the floor. A printed banner read, "Happy 8th, Anna," in rainbow colors. The house looked festive. But I knew what was coming, and no amount of glitter or frosting would change that. The house was alive with noise, but none of it touched me. I walked through the hallway, past the coat rack that still leaned slightly to the left, the framed school photos of my nephews and nieces, the wedding photo of my sister on the console, none of which included me. Not by mistake. I had been there. I had helped pay for the dress. But I was never invited into the picture. In the living room, my cousins were already a few glasses into the celebration. Laughter came easily to them. Their smiles opened wide for each other, but dimmed slightly when they saw me. It wasn't hostility. It was something worse. That vague, heavy politeness that tells you you've already been talked about. "Hey," someone muttered with a nod. I returned it with the same shallow warmth, clutching Anna's gift like a shield. I found her in the backyard. She was running barefoot on the grass, face flushed from sugar and sunlight. Her eyes caught mine briefly. Recognition flickered, then hesitated. And then came the smile, the real kind. She ran to me. "You came!" I knelt, arms open, and she crashed into me. For a moment, everything else vanished. No tension, no whispers, no bitter history. Just the warmth of a child who hadn't yet learned how to exclude. "I got you something," I whispered. "Remember what you told me on the phone?" She gasped. "The pens?" I nodded and placed the gift in her hands. She looked at it like it held magic. "Thank you," she whispered, and then she was gone again, swept up in the chaos of childhood. I stood slowly and turned back to the house. My sister was standing at the doorway, arms crossed, one eyebrow lifted. "You actually came," she said. "I was invited," I replied, keeping my voice calm. That was all. Not a thank you, not a "you look nice," just a tiny exhale of disapproval wrapped in one syllable. I walked past her and entered the dining room. The table was set. Overset, really. A performance of festivity. Too many desserts, too much wine, paper napkins with gold foil lettering that said, "Celebrate," like they had something to prove. I took a seat at the far end. Not at the children's table, but not with the main group either. I noticed that everyone else had name cards. Mine was missing. Of course. No one said anything. No one offered to move over. So I stayed where I was, the empty plate in front of me feeling heavier than it should. The meal started loud, as it always does, people talking over each other, passing bowls, and spilling stories like wine. I listened, I nodded, I laughed where appropriate. But I wasn't in the conversation. I was in the room, but not in the family. My mother made a comment about Anna's grades. My uncle bragged about his new boat. My cousin mentioned her promotion. And then came the pause. That long, heavy pause where someone was supposed to ask me something. They didn't. Instead, my sister stood up, tapping her glass with her spoon. "Before dessert," she announced, "I just want to thank everyone who's been part of Anna's life this year. Family, friends, the people who show up for her. Consistently." Her eyes didn't move toward me, but the message landed like a slap. The silence that followed was perfect, practiced. I placed my napkin on the table, slowly. My pulse was steady, my face unreadable. No one looked in my direction. No one had to. The message was already received. I wasn't part of the real family. I was a footnote, a guest in a house that was legally mine. And they had just made that clear to everyone in the room. The moment didn't arrive like thunder. It came like a slow leak in the room, air getting thinner, glances getting sharper. People laughed more nervously. Wine glasses clinked too often. Every toast felt rehearsed, every smile directed away from me. I sat still, hands folded, napkin untouched on my lap. My plate was still half full. Not because the food wasn't good, it was. I just couldn't taste it anymore. I watched my sister. She had always been the loud one, the performer, the one who needed the room to see her joy, hear her cleverness. And today was no different. She was standing again, raising her glass, motioning for quiet. Another toast. This time it was directed to Anna. "She's turning 8. Can you believe it?" she said with a practiced chuckle. 8 years of raising this brilliant, creative, completely spoiled little tornado. Laughter. "She's smart, just like her dad," she added with a wink, making her husband beam. And she's kind because she has people in her life who really care about her. More smiles, more nods. And then her tone shifted, slightly, just enough to chill the air. You know, she continued, eyes scanning the table, not everyone who shows up for the right reasons. There was a murmur, an uncomfortable shuffle. Someone coughed. But I just want to raise a glass, she said, lifting hers higher, to the real people in Anna's life. The ones who are always there, the ones who belong. Silence. No one dared look at me, not directly. Then came the phrase, like a blade, casual and brutal. Because, let's be honest, she said, smiling sweetly, some people just don't belong here. She didn't look at me. She didn't have to. The room stiffened. Someone exhaled. My cousin reached for his drink a little too fast. My mother's eyes dropped to her plate. My brother-in-law looked at the ceiling like it might offer rescue. Anna froze. I could see her at the corner of the room, one foot stepping slightly backward, unsure of the rules anymore. And I didn't flinch. Not yet. I just looked at my sister, calm, still, as if I hadn't heard it. But I had. Every syllable, every drop of venom wrapped in that smiling delivery. You don't belong here. It echoed. It filled every corner of my chest, every scar from years past, every moment I had swallowed pride and said, it's okay, they're family, every phone call not returned, every birthday I spent alone. I reached for my wine glass, not to drink, just to hold something, to remind myself I was still steady. And I smiled. Not the kind they were used to, not the one that begged for space, but the one that knew exactly what was about to happen. They didn't know it yet, but I was no longer the quiet one. I let the silence settle. Not because I didn't have words, but because I didn't need them. There's a particular kind of power in stillness, in restraint. And in that moment, as they stared anywhere but at me, I realized no one was going to fix it. No one was going to say, hey, that wasn't okay. Not my mother, not my cousins, not Anna's father, not even Anna. They were used to this. They had seen it before. And they had decided a long time ago that silence was safer than confrontation. I placed my wine glass on the table, deliberate, slow, no clinking. Then I reached down, slid the purple-wrapped gift toward me, and gently untied the silver ribbon. People were watching now, but pretending not to. I stood up. The chair creaked softly under the sudden shift. Still, no one said anything. Their eyes followed me, cautiously, like you'd watch someone in a museum who just stepped past the velvet rope. I walked to the corner of the room where Anna's pile of gifts waited beside the folding table. Pink bags, noisy toys, plastic boxes. I found the spot where mine had been placed earlier, neatly tucked between a glittery backpack and a board game. And I picked it up, just like that, with both hands, and turned around. Gasps aren't always loud. Sometimes they're just sharp breaths held in unison. No one stopped me. I walked across the room, through the dining area, back toward the main hall, each step echoing a little more than the last, not because the floor was loud, but because the moment was. When I reached the door, I paused. Not dramatically, not for effect, just enough to breathe, just enough for them to think it was over. And then I turned around. My voice was steady, quiet, controlled. You know, I said, you're right. Every head lifted. You're absolutely right, I continued, eyes fixed on my sister. I don't belong here. She raised her chin, smug, mistaking my calm for surrender. I smiled again, soft this time, like an apology I wasn't actually making. I belong in places where people don't use their own child's birthday to punish someone they resent. No one breathed. And I definitely don't belong in a house where I'm tolerated instead of welcomed. Someone at the table opened their mouth to say something, then closed it. My sister's smirk was fading now. And just so we're clear, I added, slowly lifting the gift ever so slightly in my hands, I didn't come here for you. I came for Anna. My voice cracked a little on her name, but I held it. I held all of it. I looked over to where she stood now, near the hallway, clutching a cupcake in both hands, her eyes big and confused. This was for you, I said, holding up the purple box just enough for her to see. But maybe someday you'll understand why I had to take it back. And with that, I turned, opened the front door, and stepped into the cool air. No one followed. No one called out, because they all knew what I knew now. This wasn't about a gift. It never had been. This was about what happens when the quiet one finally stops playing small. The door clicked shut behind me with a softness that betrayed the storm it left inside. I didn't slam it. I didn't need to. Some exits don't require noise, just clarity. Outside, the air was cooler than I expected. Early evening, the sun was falling slowly, casting long, golden shadows across the lawn. A few helium balloons had drifted loose and floated gently above the fence. I could still hear faint murmurs from inside, an awkward attempt to resume the party, to patch the moment with shallow cheer and sugar. But I knew. They weren't talking about cake anymore. They were talking about me. I walked slowly toward my car, the gift still in my hands. My fingers gently pressed into the wrapping paper now. It had creased slightly in the walk, but I didn't care. It wasn't about the object anymore. It was what it had come to represent. Halfway down the driveway, I heard the door open again behind me. Footsteps. I didn't turn. My sister's voice came clipped and tense. "You didn't have to make a scene." I stopped. Let the words hover in the air between us. I turned slowly, holding the gift like a book I was about to read aloud. "Is that what you think this was?" I said. "A scene?" She rolled her eyes. "God, you always make everything about you. It was a birthday for Anna. But no, you had to pull your martyr act again." I tilted my head, watching her. She looked tired now, not angry, exposed, like someone who had spent years rehearsing lines and had just been given a new script mid-performance. "You stood up," I said, calmly, "in front of everyone, and said I didn't belong. I never said your name." "You didn't have to." She crossed her arms, defensive. "You think just because you brought a fancy gift and showed up late, you get to play hero?" I let the silence build again. She hated that. And then I said it, casually, quietly, like I was commenting on the weather. "Oh, by the way," she blinked, "this house? It's mine." Her mouth opened slightly, but nothing came out. I took a step closer, lowering my voice, not threatening, just surgical. "I bought it 5 years ago from Mom and Dad. I paid full price, paid the taxes, paid the renovation." She looked confused for half a second, then angry. "No, that was just to help." "No," I interrupted gently. "That was a transaction, a legal one, a recorded one. You live here because I let you." A pause. Stillness. "You pay less than the market rate. I've never raised the rent, never said a word when you were late, never reminded you it's not really yours." Her face flushed now, not with embarrassment, but the realization that the hierarchy she thought she controlled had always been built on sand. "You said I don't belong here," I added, voice still soft. "But the truth is, I've just been letting you pretend you do." The driveway went silent. The kind of silence that only happens when something foundational breaks. A truth she couldn't unhear. I looked down at the gift one last time, the ribbon now slightly undone, and then handed it to her. She should still have this, I said, because this isn't her fault. She took it, almost reflexively, as if her arms weren't quite sure what else to do. And next month, I added, walking past her toward the car, we'll revisit the lease. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Some exits don't slam. Some exits echo. I didn't drive away immediately. I sat in the car for a long time. Engine off, hands on the steering wheel, the house looming behind me like a set I had just walked off from. Inside, I knew the atmosphere had curdled. Not because I wanted it that way, but because they weren't used to consequence. Not for me. For years, they had grown comfortable with their version of me, the quiet one, the apologetic one, the placeholder at the edge of photos, the extra fork no one counted, the silence they could insult without confrontation. But now? Now they were left with something they hadn't prepared for, the sound of someone not coming back. From the corner of my eye, I could see silhouettes moving through the curtains, bodies shifting without direction, voices raised and lowered, not in celebration, but in confusion. There's a particular kind of panic that comes after a power imbalance is exposed. They were experiencing it now, and I was outside of it, detached, free. But I still remembered their faces. My mother's, tight-lipped and frozen, somewhere between embarrassment and self-protection. She wouldn't speak up. She never did. Her loyalty was convenience disguised as tradition. My brother-in-law's, expressionless, like a man who just realized the mortgage he never asked about might actually matter. My cousins, eyes darting, whispering behind napkins, already rewriting the story in their heads to make themselves innocent bystanders. And my sister was rattled. Not angry, not triumphant, rattled. Because for the first time in her life, she'd lost control of the room, of the narrative, of me. She'd built so much around the idea that I needed to earn my seat, that I was less, that her family was central and mine peripheral. But she had never once considered that the foundation could shift, that maybe I had stopped asking for their permission, that maybe I owned more than the title deed. I owned the moment, and the moment was cracking her. Even Anna had changed. I saw her through the window, clutching the purple gift to her chest, sitting on the bottom step of the staircase. She wasn't playing, wasn't running, just sitting, watching. Maybe she understood. Or maybe she just felt what everyone else was trying to hide. Because children don't need explanations. They feel truth before they know how to speak it. I knew I would carry these faces with me, not out of pain, but clarity. They were my history, but they would not be my home. The drive home was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that makes you lonely, but the kind that lets you breathe. I rolled the windows down, let the air hit my face, let the noise of the street replace the noise inside my head. For the first time in years, I wasn't rehearsing what I should have said or wishing I had said less. I wasn't shrinking in the rearview mirror of their judgment. I had said what needed to be said. And more importantly, I had left. For years, I had stayed in rooms that didn't want me, laughed at jokes that landed like knives, showed up with gifts and grace and hope, only to be treated like a placeholder in my own bloodline. But not this time. This time, I left with my head high, and their silence following me. Back in my apartment, everything was still. The same plants, the same coffee cup by the sink. But it all felt different now. Not because the world had changed, but because I had. I put on music, nothing dramatic, just something soft, something that didn't beg for attention. I poured a glass of water, sat on the couch, and exhaled. And as I sat there, I realized something strange. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel bitter. I felt clean, like someone who had finally rinsed off the weight of being tolerated. Someone who had chosen themselves after a lifetime of asking others to do it first. There's a myth we carry, especially in families, that love means endurance, that you must suffer quietly to prove you care, that being present is more important than being respected. But that night, I chose differently. I chose absence. I chose boundaries. And I chose peace. And Anna? She'd grow up. One day she'd ask questions. One day she'd remember that strange birthday, the one where her aunt showed up, handed her something wrapped in purple, and then disappeared. And maybe she'd understand why. Maybe she'd feel that sometimes love isn't staying. It's refusing to let yourself be broken in front of people who never tried to hold you whole. I don't know if they talked about me after I left. I'm sure they did. I'm sure they edited the story to make themselves more comfortable. Maybe I was dramatic. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I was the one who couldn't let things go. But none of that matters, because I didn't leave for them. I left for me. And for the first time in my life, that was enough.